Hi, I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. Lydia asked me if I could make a quilt rack. Actually, she was looking for a quilt rack and I volunteered to make it. And we talked about it and went through different ideas and I came up with this one. So I'm going to be working on it tonight, see if I can't make this thing happen. When I worked at Douglas Autotech, I'd get off work about 3:30 and then I'd drive home. And that was in the early 2000s. Started work there in 1998, stayed there until 2005. During that time, business was kind of bad for local farmers. So on the way home, I'd see signs for auctions. As people were selling their farm off, people were buying up the acreage and then they had the house left there with nothing, no use for it. So they would have an auction and sell off all their belongings. Well, I got so I would stop at the auctions. Now since I was coming home at 3:30, most of the auction was already over. The big items had gone and all there was left was box lots and junk piles. Well, one afternoon as I drove home, I saw a sign, went to the auction, and as usual, most of the stuff was gone, but they had a shed that they hadn't gotten into yet. So I walked inside and there was this huge chunk of log, about this high, pretty close to 4 foot, and about 25, 30 inches in diameter. Mounted on top of it was this little vise, held in place with some wood screws. Somebody's using it for a workbench. And on the shelves, along the walls, were boards stacked. And I looked at the boards and I thought, wow, those are awful nice dark wood. Now, they were all rough sawn, and they'd been there a long time. They were covered with dust, real deep. Lots of spider webs. The place was a trashed out mess. But the auctioneer just happened to be walking by the shed. And he said, now we're going to auction off the contents of this shed. It was getting late. He wanted to go home. So, there was only me and a couple other guys there. So I bid on the contents of the shed and ended up buying the entire shed worth of stuff. I forget exactly how much it was, but it was much more than 20 bucks. I never spent more than 20 bucks on anything. Well, I loaded up all the wood and brought it home, including the 2 foot diameter log, 4 foot high, chunk billet. Had to ask a guy to help me load it up into the back of the truck. It was too heavy to move by myself. And when I got home, I did a little checking and I ran a piece through the planer. It was walnut. The whole barn was full of walnut, including that big chunk of log. On that big chunk of log, I cut off a section about that tall and I turned it into the stand for my anvil out in the blacksmith shop. Works great. Strong as the dickens. Great big heavy thing, doesn't want to walk around a whole lot. So I don't have to mount the anvil into the ground to withstand the pounding. That big base on it and the weight of the log holds it steady. And I took the wood and I made shelving out of it. I made 3 shelves. And this is one of them. Now the other 2 are upstairs, acting as library shelves. And this one's set down here on the rack down here in the basement. And when she talked about wanting a quilt rack, I thought, I have the perfect thing. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to take this piece of closet rod and I'm going to cut it to length to fit in between the braces for the shelf and mount the rod up in there, and then the quilt can drape over the top of it. And that'll let the quilt hang down and you can see the pretty pattern in the quilt. Well, I can measure in between the 2 boards using all manner of tools, but I have a couple of interesting ones. This is Stanley number 480 Expandable rule. The way it works, you loosen that screw up, that lets you slide the two sections apart, and it'll stretch out to 8 feet 1.5 inches. You can use it to measure inside measurements, kind of like an inside micrometer. A little less exact perhaps, but same principle. Now, this shelf is shorter than 8 feet. It's actually shorter than 4 feet. So I can't really use this rule to measure it. But I do have this one. Now, based on the information from the other rule, I can extrapolate that this is a Stanley number 280. The Stanley 480 and the Stanley 280 are supposed to have the same kind of marking on them. At about the 6-inch mark, it's supposed to say Stanley number 280, New Brunswick, USA. Well, unfortunately, this rule has been left out and exposed, so it's hard to read the numbers on it. The way you read it, you put it inside, expand it out, tighten the screw. This screw is stripped, so I'm not going to be able to tighten it. But you read the scale. And this says this is 3 feet 6 3/16 inches. So I need to cut my bar 3 feet 6 3/16 inches long. Perfect. Modern lumber yards, well, big box ones anyways, have this thing where they barcode everything. That means that every stick of wood has got one of these stinking labels on it. It wouldn't be so bad if it was a label that you could get off, but short of physically destroying the label, I haven't found anything that takes it off without damaging the wood underneath. So I spend time scraping it off the glue, because if you leave the glue on, the stain doesn't take. Stain doesn't take, varnish doesn't take. So you spend an awful lot of time doing something that has no value at all, other than making inventory easier at the place that sells the wood. It does make a fine living for the people that goof off, though. This stuff takes off label residue fairly easily. Three marks verifies the center. 2 does it most of the time, but 3 is just insurance. One, then 90 degrees, then 45 degrees to the first one, and all 3 lines cross exactly in the center. Simple little tool. Dad made it up out of 3 pieces of plexiglass that he cut out on his table saw. Now, Dad could have bought one, but Dad was a lot like me. Why buy something when you can make it yourself? And this is a very accurate tool. It works quite well, especially considering it's just 3 scrap pieces of plexiglass. It's not the materials that makes the difference. It's what you do with them. There we go. Now I'm going to drill a pilot hole in the end so that the screw won't split out this soft pine. So not having walnut handy, I'm going to use this red mahogany, which is going to look very similar to the color of the shelf. So it should blend in okay, and most of it's going to be covered with a quilt. So now I'm going to mark this shelf at 1 7/8 inches up. And that's where I'm going to drill the hole for the screw. Do exactly the same on the other end. There we go. There's one. I need to drill a clearance hole for this screw because I don't want to have the screw threads engage this piece of wood at all. I just need to have it engage the dowel. So the easiest way to find out what the clearance hole is take one of these little plastic cards. This is a drill bit gauge. It's a freebie from the Handyman organization. I bought a subscription to their magazine, and I enjoyed it, but it was a whole lot of stuff that I already knew. So I dropped my subscription, but as a bonus of signing up for it, I got one of these. Now, in junk boxes, I have 4 of these now. Seems like a lot of people signed up for the Handyman organization and decided that the little drill bit card drill gauge wasn't as necessary as the Handyman group thought it was. But I'll tell you, I use this a lot. I use it to sort drill bits, I use it to check screw sizes, I use it for all kinds of things. And it comes in quite handy. The white one is a little easier to read the numbers on it. You have to have this one under direct light in order to read it well. But having one of these is quite a good thing. So this says 3/16. I need a 3/16 drill bit. Since I have this drill bit index, it does the same thing as the drill card. Take out a 3/16 drill bit, chuck it up in the drill, and follow the pilot hole left by the countersink bit. The drill bit that I use to drill the countersunk hole is just a cheap stamped steel spade bit. And you'd look at it and go, wow, that's not worth anything. I got these. I was making a stairway for metal powder components, making a stair railing. And I needed some countersunk screws. So I went to the hardware store and I picked up some of these and been using them ever since. I left metal powder components in 1992. So it was probably about 1991 that I made the stair railing. Turned out quite well. Okay, quilt rack's done. Be a nice place to put knickknacks and dishes and plates and whatever else she wants to, right along the top here. And I think the quilt's going to work quite well going across this rod. Go up, get approval from the designer, and I come back down, disassemble it, and stain and varnish this rod. Design's approved. Now it's just a matter of getting the varnish on it, letting it dry. That's going to take a day or two. So okay, now I just have to varnish. Now I just have to stain and varnish this rod, and we'll be ready to hang it on the wall. But it's going to take a day or two, so we're going to end the video here. If you have any suggestions for new video, questions about today's video, or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments. You know I read them all. Thanks for watching. This video is not to be viewed by anyone under the age of 13 in the U.S. or 16 in the European Union, without the express written permission of the parents or legal guardians of the underage person. Such written permission must be on file at the local government entity in charge of enforcing the rules and regulations established by the FTC. Anyone violating these terms is admitting by default that they hold harmless the owners and operators of this channel, Any and all questions should be addressed to your local branch of the FTC.